He tried to ruin my business, so I legally destroyed his $1 million deal. I'm 32. I own a small, independent publishing house that specializes in speculative fiction. It's my life's work, built from the ground up with ink-stained fingers and a second mortgage on my ancestral home. For 5 years, my life was a quiet rhythm of manuscripts, editing, and the smell of old paper. Then I met Ethan, 28. Ethan was a writer. When I met him, he was working 3 part-time jobs and writing on his lunch breaks. He had a raw, undeniable talent, but his prose was undisciplined, and his plot was a mess. He was frustrated, on the verge of quitting. But I saw the brilliant story buried beneath the chaos. I saw him. I signed him for a 3-book deal. It was a risk. He was a nobody. But my press was finally stable enough to take a chance on a passion project. I became more than his publisher. I became his editor, his mentor, his partner. I gave him a generous advance, enough that he could quit his other jobs and just write. I spent hundreds of hours with him, line by line, untangling his narrative, helping him find the voices of his characters. We didn't just edit a book, we forged it together in the fires of late nights and endless coffee. We fell in love somewhere between chapter 12 and the epilogue. His debut novel, The Gilded Cage, was a surprise hit. Not a blockbuster, but a critical darling that earned back its advance and then some. He became the face of my press. I handled the business, the logistics, the marketing. He was the talent, the star. We were a perfect team. He moved into my old farmhouse with me, and the second book was even more successful. For the first time, we had real money, real security. I thought we were building an empire, our empire. Last Wednesday was the deadline for his 3rd manuscript, the final book in the trilogy, the keystone of our shared success. I'd arranged a celebratory dinner. I came home to find the house empty. My gut twisted. Then, at 6:05 p.m., an email landed in my inbox. The subject line was, "Regarding our partnership." It wasn't a personal note. It was a cold, formal statement. "Leo, I have accepted an offer from a major publishing house for my future works. My agent believes my brand has outgrown the indie scene. I consider our professional and personal relationship terminated. My lawyer will be in touch." I sat there, the screen glowing in the dusk, the smell of the ruined celebratory dinner heavy in the air. His brand, the one I built from scratch? The agent he got because I introduced him at a convention? After 5 years, I was a professional and personal relationship to be terminated. For an hour, I was paralyzed by a grief so profound it felt like a physical death. Then, something inside me shifted. The publisher, the man who built a business on contracts and clauses, took over. He wanted to terminate our partnership? Fine. I would execute it with ruthless efficiency. I opened my laptop. Problem asterisk, a key author has breached his contract and terminated a personal agreement. Solution asterisk, mitigate damages and enforce all existing legal boundaries. Website asterisk, I logged into the admin panel of my press's website. His author profile, with the bio I wrote and the headshot I paid for, was the centerpiece. I unpublished his page. All links now led to a 404 not found. Social media asterisk, I ran all the social media for the press. I removed all pinned posts about his books. I drafted new content focusing on our other talented authors. I untagged him from years of photos. Distribution portal asterisk, the rights to the first 2 books were exclusively mine for 7 years. I logged into our distributor's portal. I slashed the price of the ebooks for The Gilded Cage and its sequel to 99 cents each. If he wanted to build his brand elsewhere, I would devalue the foundation it was built on. It was petty, but it was also a sound business strategy to liquidate assets in a hostile transition. The manuscript asterisk, the contract for the 3rd book was ironclad. Delivery was due by 5 p.m. that day. He hadn't delivered. He was in breach. I drafted a formal email to him, CCing my lawyer, stating that as per Clause 7(b) of his contract, failure to deliver the manuscript by the agreed-upon deadline constituted a material breach. The whole process took less than an hour. I felt eerily calm. I packed a bag of his things, clothes, his laptop, and left them on the porch. Then I locked the door, activated the alarm, and went to stay with my sister. A week went by in a blur of work. I threw myself into editing a new sci-fi epic from a debut author. Then, this morning, I received a frantic, forwarded email from my lawyer. It was from Ethan's new high-powered agent. She was furious. It seems that when Ethan announced his big move to a new publisher, his fans rushed to buy his old books, only to find them selling for less than a cup of coffee. It cheapened his brand. Furthermore, my legal notice of his contract breach was apparently a bad faith ambush. They were demanding I immediately restore his website presence, raise the prices, and retract my threatening letter. It appears my silent compliance wasn't the reaction he was expecting. Update 1. Thank you all for the support. Reading your comments about contract law and intellectual property made me feel less alone in this. This last week has been a masterclass in audacity. I met with my lawyer, Clara. She's a bulldog who specializes in publishing law. After she read the letter from Ethan's agent, she laughed. A loud, sharp bark of a laugh. Bad faith ambush for enforcing a contract he signed? Theatrical, I'll give them that. Clara drafted a response that was a work of art in its brutal simplicity. It stated, 1. My press owned the exclusive publishing rights to books 1 and 2 for the full term of the contract, and our pricing strategy was our own discretion. 2. Mr. Stone was, in fact, in material breach of his contract for Book 3. 3. Any attempt to reproduce the characters or world from the first 2 books in his new work would constitute a severe copyright infringement, and we would pursue it to the fullest extent of the law. This last point was the kill shot. The entire trilogy was one continuous story. Without the rights to his own characters and world, his multi-million-dollar deal with the new publisher was for a book he couldn't legally write. The response from their side was no longer just a demand, it was a threat. The new publisher's legal team sent a cease and desist. They claimed Ethan had creative and emotional equity in the brand, and my actions constituted tortious interference with his new contract. They proposed a buyout settlement. I would sell them the rights to the first 2 books for a paltry sum, essentially letting them consolidate the trilogy. It was a lowball offer designed to make me feel small and powerless against their corporate might. Clara's advice was simple: ignore it. They're trying to scare you into selling your most valuable asset for pennies because their star author forgot to read the fine print. Let's see if they're willing to go to court over a book that doesn't even exist yet. The real insanity started when Ethan contacted me directly, bypassing the lawyers. Leo, what are you doing? You're burning everything down. My career. You can't hold my characters hostage. They're a part of me. Then, the one that made my blood run cold. Remember that night in the cabin when we outlined the finale? That was a collaboration. I'll say you stole my ideas. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Clara. Her reply was succinct. Oh, he's a gift. A stupid gift. Keep him talking. The worst part came 2 days ago. I saw an article in an online literary journal. The headline was, Indie Press Tries to Trap Breakout Star. The article, quoting an anonymous source close to the author, painted me as a bitter, controlling ex who couldn't stand to see his protege succeed. It claimed I was using legal technicalities to hold his career hostage out of spite. He was framing himself as the creative genius escaping the clutches of a small-time tyrant. He was trying to ruin my reputation, the one thing my press truly runs on. Clara is now drafting a defamation lawsuit. I wanted to build a legacy of championing new authors. I never thought the villain of my story would be the hero I created. Update 2. The past month has felt like a year. The move out of his intellectual property was more dramatic than I could have imagined, and the fallout from his smear campaign took a life of its own. The standoff continued. His new publisher, a behemoth called Sovereign Press, put immense pressure on me. Their lawyers called Clara daily. But Clara held the line. The contract was the contract. The IP was the IP. They couldn't start promotion for a book that might be legally dead on arrival. The flashpoint came during a scheduled negotiation call. It was me, Clara, Ethan, his agent, and 2 of Sovereign's top lawyers. They thought they could corner me. They started by offering a slightly less insulting buyout. Clara politely declined. Then Ethan, against the frantic hand signals of his own agent, decided to speak. He launched into a passionate, self-pitying monologue about how the story was his soul, how the characters were his children, and how I, a mere facilitator, was trying to kidnap them. He then made his fatal mistake. He mentioned the finale we outlined at the cabin, claiming it was proof of his sole ownership of the ideas. Clara muted our end of the call and looked at me. The cabin? The one you own? Do you have Wi-Fi there? Yes, I said, confused. And do you use a cloud service for your documents? My heart hammered. Everything. Every draft, every note. It all syncs to a private server with time-stamped version history. Clara unmuted the call. Mr. Stone, I'm so glad you brought up that creative weekend. My client, as a meticulous editor, keeps extensive, digitally time-stamped notes. We have the entire version history of the manuscript, including the notes from that weekend, which shows my client's edits, suggestions, and original contributions making up approximately 40% of the final outline. Your attempt to claim sole creation while threatening to falsely accuse my client of theft is duly noted. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Ethan's agent abruptly ended the call, citing technical difficulties. He had just confessed, in front of his new publisher's lawyers, that he was willing to lie and that my creative contributions were substantial. He'd not only proven my value but also his own untrustworthiness. But my true vindication came from a place I never expected. The literary community. The indie press trap star story had made waves. People were choosing sides. But writers and small press editors know how the industry works. They know the value of a good editor and the sanctity of a contract. A well-respected book blogger, someone who had championed the Gilded Cage from the beginning, did a deep dive. She interviewed other authors from my press. She talked to editors and agents. She wrote a follow-up piece titled, "A Deal is a Deal," on loyalty and lies in the indie scene. She laid out the facts without naming names, but the context was clear. A small press took a huge risk on a new author, invested everything in him, and when he got a bigger offer, he breached contract and tried to burn the press down on his way out. The story flipped. The comments sections were brutal. Ethan wasn't a hero escaping a tyrant. He was an amateur who didn't understand his own contract, a snake who betrayed the person who built his career. The narrative he tried to spin had unraveled completely. Final update. I'm writing this for closure. To put the final, definitive period on this chapter of my life. The dust has settled, and the landscape looks very different. After that disastrous conference call, everything collapsed for Ethan. Sovereign Press, facing a messy potential lawsuit and saddled with a star author who had just proven himself to be both a liar and legally entangled, did what corporations do. They cut their losses. They invoked a clause in his contract regarding legal assurances and authorial integrity. They dropped him. The multi-million-dollar deal vanished overnight. His agent dropped him a week later. In our tiny, interconnected world, no one wanted to touch an author with a reputation for both disloyalty and a willingness to publicly smear his partners. The final word on the matter came not from a lawyer, but from an email I received 2 weeks ago from a young editor at Sovereign Press. She was an admirer of my press and felt sick about what had happened. She wrote, "I hope you know, no one here believed his story. We all knew what a good editor means for a debut author. He came in here acting like he was a gift to literature, but he couldn't even articulate the core themes of his own book without quoting his early reviews. The reviews that praised the very structure you helped him build. I'm glad you stood your ground. You stood up for all the small presses." She told me the rest. Without the big deal, and with the advance likely needing to be paid back, Ethan was in financial ruin. He had tried to salvage the third book, writing a version without the characters he no longer had the rights to, but it was incoherent. He had sold a trilogy but was now a man who could only legally write the ending to a story he couldn't mention. His brand was now toxic. He had put a few bitter, rambling posts on social media, which only served to cement his reputation as unstable and unprofessional, before deleting his accounts entirely. Do I feel happy about it? No. There's a deep, aching sadness for the man I thought he was and the beautiful story we could have finished together. There is no joy in watching someone self-destruct. There is only the quiet, grim satisfaction of order restored. The consequences were complete, and they were all self-inflicted. His attempt to portray me as a villain destroyed his reputation in the community that mattered. Result: his career is over before it truly began. His greed and ignorance of his own contract nullified his big break. Result: financial ruin. His lies on a recorded line with lawyers gave me all the leverage. Result: he lost his publisher, his agent, and his future. I took the high road. I restored the prices of his 2 books. They are brilliant works, and the artists who designed the covers and the team who marketed them deserve to benefit. They continue to sell steadily, providing a quiet, constant income stream for my press. His name is on the cover, but my legacy is in the pages. My life is my own again. I'm currently working with a new, brilliant young author. We have a detailed, ironclad contract, with a collaboration clause that is crystal clear. I've learned that you can believe in an artist's dream without letting them make a nightmare of your reality. I never heard from Ethan again. I have the rights to his world, but I am finally, truly, free of his.